folks, welcome back to the absolute best tennis coverage you will find anywhere. I need you to hit pause on whatever you are doing this very instant. Put the smartphone down, ignore the noise around you, and lock your focus right here. Crank that volume knob all the way to 11, and listen up because what we just saw go down on the hard courts of Abu Dhabi wasn't just another day at the office. It was something far beyond a typical match. We are talking about a full-blown earthquake in the sports universe. The entire hierarchy of women's tennis just felt the ground move beneath its feet. We walked in here today fully prepared to watch a standard coronation. Everyone expected the heavy hitter from the Russian Federation, the world number 11, and second seed Ekaterina Alexandrova to just steamroll through, crush the opposition without breaking a sweat, and run the show like she always does on these fast courts. But let me tell you, the script wasn't just edited, it was thrown into the shredder. The impossible just became reality right in front of our faces. Those breaking news banners are not a glitch. The shockwaves are real, rattling from Moscow to St. Petersburg and shaking the foundations of the tour. Alexandra Eala, the pride and joy of the Philippines, that 20-year-old left-handed gladiator who looked finished just 24 hours ago, has pulled off a miracle. She didn't just knock on the door. She kicked it down and dismantled the house brick by brick. In a quarterfinal clash that analysts will be dissecting for decades, Alexandra Eala has taken down the titan Ekaterina Alexandrova. Let that sink in for a second. The world number 45 just sent the world number 11 packing in dramatic style. But it isn't just the W next to her name. It is the gritty manner in which she snatched this victory. This was a war of attrition, a masterclass in mental toughness, and a textbook David versus Goliath story unfolding live under the glaring floodlights of Zayed Sports City. On paper, Alexandrova had this in the bag. She is a machine, a flat-hitting monster who strikes the ball so hard it practically screams across the net before you can blink. She is the one with laser-guided missiles for ground strokes. Just remember, she took apart Diana Yastremska in under 60 minutes in the last round with frightening efficiency. She walked onto the court fresh-rested and loaded with firepower. Across the net, you had Alex Eala, a young talent who had just survived a grueling 3-hour marathon only yesterday. We are talking about a contender who was down 0-4 in the deciding set against Alexandra Sasnovich, dangling off a cliff edge, staring defeat in the face, and somehow climbed her way back to the land of the living. Every critic out there said she would be running on fumes today. The experts swore her legs would feel like concrete blocks and she wouldn't keep up. They claimed Alexandrova's blistering speed would overwhelm her, bury her, and expose her defense completely. The oddsmakers had the Filipina pegged as a massive underdog. The commentary team was already planning the semifinal schedule for Alexandrova before the umpire even tossed the coin. Boy, were they dead wrong. The Russian tennis community is stunningly silent tonight, because their unstoppable force just got derailed by a player who ignored the laws of physics and exhaustion. Eala didn't just survive the storm. She flourished in it. She soaked up the pressure. She redirected the velocity. She used that nasty lefty spin to crack open angles that left Alexandrova completely stranded and searching for answers. This result is gigantic. It is a career-defining moment. We are talking about potentially cracking the top 30 if Eala keeps riding this incredible wave of momentum. We are watching her 5th career WTA quarterfinal evolve into her most significant semifinal run yet, at this elite WTA 500 level event. But forget the ranking points and the paycheck for a second. This is a massive warning shot fired at the rest of the tour. It is a message resonating in every locker room. The Manila Maiden isn't just a promising up-and-comer anymore. She is a dangerous reality right now. She is officially a giant slayer. Tonight we are going to dissect this match frame by frame to figure out how on earth this happened. We will dig into the tactical adjustments, the psychological battles, the pivot points, and the absolute madness that took over in the final stretch of the contest. We will look at how Alexandrova's serve, usually money in the bank, crumbled under the suffocating pressure of Eala's relentless return game. And we have to talk about that crowd. Thousands of Filipinos turning the arena into a home game, screaming, chanting, and practically carrying their girl across the finish line with their energy. So strap yourselves in and get ready for a wild ride. If you are a die-hard tennis fan, if you live for the underdog story, and if you crave unscripted sports drama, you have landed in exactly the right spot. We are diving deep into the weeds here. We are going to perform an autopsy on this massive upset. This is the legendary tale of how Alexandra Eala stunned the globe, silenced the Russian camp, and etched her name into the Abu Dhabi Open history books forever. Let's get right into it. To really grasp the gravity of today's result, we have to zoom out and look at the landscape surrounding this clash. You cannot respect the view from the peak if you don't understand the brutal mountain that had to be climbed first. Let's kick things off with Ekaterina Alexandrova. Heading into this match, she was playing some of the cleanest tennis of her life. At 31 years old, she is a battle-hardened veteran of the circuit. She knows these courts like the back of her hand. She thrives on speed because her whole game is built on heavy artillery, not loopy topspin. She hits it flat hard and paints the lines deep. Her shots cut through the air like bullets. When she is in the zone, you literally cannot play against her. In the round of 16, she faced Diana Yastremska, a dangerous player, and treated it like a light warm-up, crushing her 6-3, 6-0. She was clinical, she was cold, and she barely spent an hour sweating out there, keeping her energy reserves fully stocked. She came into this quarterfinal with a full battery confidence through the roof, knowing she was the highest seed left in her bracket. The road to the trophy looked paved and cleared. All she had to do was step over this 20-year-old kid from the Philippines. Now let's flip the coin to Alexandra Eala. Her situation is a totally different universe. She is only 20. She is sitting at number 45 in the world rankings. Sure, that is a career-high ranking, but it is still miles away from the elite top 10 circle. And her journey to this quarterfinal? It wasn't a Sunday drive. It was a brutal, rocky trek loaded with hazards. Only 24 hours ago, she was fighting for her life against Alexandra Sasnovich. While hitting that career high is a huge milestone, the gap between her and the top tier is still a canyon. Plus, getting to this stage was absolute torture. It wasn't a smooth cruise, it was a test of survival. Every step she took to get here was earned through sweat and grit. We have to keep in mind that yesterday, she emptied the tank completely in a war against Sasnovich. I really need to drive these specific numbers home because they are the key to unlocking the physical story of today's performance. You have to remember just yesterday she was out there in the trenches battling for nearly 3 grueling hours. That wasn't just a standard match. It was a survival marathon, where she dropped the first set, fell into a deep 0-4 hole in the decider, and literally stared elimination in the face while fighting off match points. She had to completely empty the tank, scraping the absolute bottom of her physical and mental reserves to claw her way back and steal that victory in a heart-stopping tiebreaker. From a biological standpoint, Eala had every excuse to be running on fumes today. With such a short turnaround, the massive emotional crash that follows that kind of drama usually guarantees a flat, sluggish performance the next morning. We aren't just guessing here. This is a well-documented physiological phenomenon known as the championship hangover that affects athletes across every high-level sport. You ride that massive high, your body dumps all its adrenaline, and you wake up with absolutely nothing left in the engine. That is precisely the vulnerability Alexandrova was banking on, and exactly what her coaching staff had drawn up on the whiteboard. Their entire game plan hinged on one simple bet: if they pushed the tempo right from the first ball, Eala's heavy legs would eventually collapse under the pressure. And if we are keeping it real, the opening set followed that script to the letter. Right out of the gate, Alexandrova unleashed an offensive blitzkrieg that was honestly brutal to witness. You could hear the difference in the acoustics. The sound of the ball exploding off Alexandrova's strings sounded more like artillery fire than a tennis match. Pow, pow, pow. She was absolutely suffocating Eala by taking the ball early on the rise, stepping well inside the baseline and punishing any second serve that sat up. By contrast, Eala looked like she was moving in slow motion. It seemed like her neural processing speed was just a fraction off. When you play a power hitter like the Russian who strikes it so flat, being a millisecond late means you are handcuffed and making contact behind your body. It was painful to watch Eala laboring just to find her rhythm and get her spacing right on the court. Her trademark lefty forehand, usually her biggest weapon, was consistently landing way too short. And against a striker like Alexandrova, leaving the ball short is basically signing your own death warrant. Alexandrova would simply step in and hammer a winner deep into the corner without a second thought. The first set flew by in a hazy blur, with the Russian breaking serve decisively in the 4th game. She doubled down by breaking again in the 8th game, wrapping up the set with a commanding scoreline of 6-2 for the Russian contender. It looked like the exact mismatch the world rankings said it would be. Alexandrova was winning a staggering 80% of her first serve points and dominating every rally that went under 4 shots. It was a display of clean, ruthless, and efficient power tennis. The energy in the stadium completely died as the Filipino fans who packed the stands, hoping for another miracle, fell into stunned silence. You could practically feel the oxygen getting sucked out of the arena. It felt like the cold, hard reality of the situation was finally settling in. It seemed obvious that the cumulative fatigue had finally tackled Alex Eala. At this point, if you were watching the stream at home, nobody would have blamed you for turning it off. You would have been totally justified in thinking, well, she put up an incredible fight this week, but the tank is empty and this is the end of the line. Alexandrova looked absolutely imperious out there. She wasn't even breaking a sweat and appeared to be breathing as calmly as if she were sitting on her couch. She strolled to the chair for the changeover with the supreme confidence of someone who had a dinner reservation to catch in an hour. But this is exactly where the tactical genius of Alex Eala begins to shine through. This is the moment we witnessed a level of mental maturity that seems impossible for someone who is only 20 years old. During the break between sets, Eala refused to panic. She didn't call the trainer or make excuses. She simply sat there with a towel over her head, blocked out the noise, and performed a hard reboot on her system. She came to the realization that she couldn't win a shootout. If she tried to match the Russians' power shot for shot, she was guaranteed to go home. She simply doesn't have that raw velocity today, so she made the decision to fundamentally change the geometry and physics of the match. As the second set started, Eala adjusted her real estate. She backed up further behind the baseline on the return to buy herself precious milliseconds to react. Furthermore, instead of trying to hit flat winners, she switched to the tactical moonball. This wasn't done in a weak defensive way, but in a strategic style reminiscent of Rafael Nadal. She started injecting heavy looping topspin, pushing the ball high and deep into the backhand corner. Why did this work? Because Alexandrova is a quintessential flat hitter, and flat hitters absolutely despise high-bouncing balls. Players like her want the ball right in their strike zone, ideally at hip level. When you force the ball up high above their shoulder line, they can't flatten it out effectively. They can't generate that same explosive pace from that height. They are forced to swing up on the ball, which immediately introduces a much higher margin for error. Suddenly, Alexandrova's rhythm was completely shattered. She would wind up to crush a big shot only for the ball to kick up wildly off the surface, forcing a clumsy last-second adjustment. She started mistiming her strokes significantly. We saw a forehand slam into the net, then a backhand sailed well past the baseline. The unforced errors began to slowly creep into her game. Eala sensed the momentum shift immediately. Her grunts got louder, and the fist pumps got more intense after every point. She was successfully dragging Alexandrova into the trenches. She was forcing the rallies to extend far beyond the Russians' comfort zone. Keep in mind, Alexandrova wants the point done in 3 hits. Eala was now stretching those exchanges to 10, 12, and even 15 shots. And the longer the rally went, the more the advantage tilted toward the gritty defense of the Filipina star. The second set transformed into an absolute dogfight. The score clawed its way to 3 games all, then 4 games all, and finally to 5-4, with Alexandrova serving just to stay alive. The pressure was suffocating. The crowd suddenly roared back to life. The chants of "Let's go Eala" started reverberating off the stadium walls, creating an electric atmosphere. Alexandrova, who had been so composed earlier, started to look visibly agitated. Glaring at her box, gesturing angrily at the court, she was clearly rattled. On set point, Eala produced a miraculous passing shot, unleashing a running forehand down the line that kissed just a sliver of the white paint. The entire stadium erupted. Eala claims the second set 6-4. We are deadlocked at 1 set apiece, and now we head into a deciding third set. This is absolute shock territory. Logic suggests that at this stage, the physical advantage should have swung back to Alexandrova. Eala has now endured 4 sets of high-intensity tennis in the span of 2 days on top of yesterday's marathon. Physiology dictates she should be cramping by now. By all laws of physiology, her tank should have been running on fumes by that point. But let me tell you, adrenaline is one heck of a drug, and when you combine that with an unshakable refusal to lose it, becomes a force of nature that simply overrides exhaustion. As soon as that deciding third set kicked off, Eala didn't wait for an invitation. She pounced immediately, snatching a break of Alexandrova's serve right out of the gate. At the same time, the Russian star's biggest weapon completely betrayed her. Her first serve percentage didn't just drop, it fell off a cliff. Alexandrova tried to muscle her way out of trouble, attempting to bludgeon through Eala's defenses with raw power. But the ball kept coming back with annoying consistency. Eala had transformed into a literal brick wall that simply would not crack. For every rocket the Russian fired from the baseline, Eala redirected it with interest and laser-guided precision. Then came a sequence in the third game of the final set that didn't just change the momentum, it defined the entire match. If you ask me, this specific moment is where the match was won and lost. Alexandrova had a golden breakpoint opportunity on her racket, a chance to level the score at 1-all and steady the ship. The Russian crushed a drive volley that looked for all the world like a guaranteed winner. But miraculously, Eala read her mind, scrambled frantically to her left, and threw up a defensive topspin lob that sailed over her opponent's head, kissing the baseline for a winner that defied logic. Alexandrova just stood there, frozen in the middle of the court, completely shell-shocked by what had just happened. Her hands went to her hips, her shoulders dropped, and the body language screamed defeat. Everyone in the stadium felt the energy shift. It was the unmistakable look of a player whose belief was crumbling. It was the sinking realization that this younger opponent wasn't going anywhere. The scoreline blew up fast, from 2-3 to 3-love and quickly to 4-1. The Russian fans in the stands went dead silent. Even the commentators in the booth were having trouble processing the upset. They were openly asking if we were actually watching the world number 11 crash out of the tournament in such a spectacular meltdown. But you don't get to the top without grit, and Alexandrova showed her championship pedigree by mounting one last stand. She managed to claw one break back, narrowing the gap to 4-2. After a gritty hold, the scoreboard tightened up to 4-3. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, as Eala stepped up to the baseline, suddenly staring down the barrel of 2 breakpoints. If she dropped this service game, it would be 4-all, and the momentum would swing entirely to the veteran. This is the kind of high-pressure cooker where legends are either made or broken. Facing a 15-40 deficit, Eala produced absolute magic, an ace right down the tee. After barely hitting any aces in the first set, she pulled out the perfect serve exactly when her life depended on it. At 30-40, she locked in for a grueling 20-shot rally, running Alexandrova from corner to corner until the exhausted Russian finally dumped a backhand into the net. From deuce, Eala held her nerve to secure the game for a 5-3 lead. The next game, with Alexandrova serving to stay alive in the match, turned into an absolute disaster for the favorite. The pressure clearly got inside the Russian veteran's head. She coughed up a double fault at 15-all, followed immediately by a wild forehand error at 15-30. Suddenly, Eala had 2 match points on her racket. She went for glory on the first one with an aggressive return but missed the mark, bringing it to 30-40. One chance left. On the second championship point, Alexandrova unleashed a massive serve out wide. Eala barely got a frame on it, chipping a short floating defensive ball back into the middle of the court. Alexandrova charged the net for what should have been the easiest put-away of the night. She had the entire court at her mercy. She could have put it anywhere. But the pressure caused a fatal split second of hesitation. She saw Eala scrambling and tried to be too perfect, attempting to paint the lines. Tragically, she pushed the volley just wide of the sideline. The line judge's call rang out like a gunshot, followed by a stunned silence. Eala looked up at the chair umpire, who confirmed the call. Game, set, and match to the underdog. What we saw next was raw, unfiltered emotion. Eala's racket hit the floor as she collapsed to her knees, burying her face in her hands as tears streamed down her face. It was a scene like her win yesterday, but dialed the intensity up to 11. She hadn't just won a match, she had completely dismantled a top 15 player in the world. She had taken down a seasoned veteran on her favorite surface. The meeting at the net was blink and you miss it fast. The handshake was icy cold. Shock was written all over Alexandrova's face. She looked like she couldn't comprehend what just hit her. She grabbed her bags and stormed off the court before the applause even died down. She knew this was a colossal missed opportunity. For a player of her status, losing to the world number 45 in the quarterfinals is nothing short of a competitive disaster. It is a total shock to the system. On the flip side, for Eala, the on-court interview was absolute electric energy. She poured her heart out, thanking the overseas Filipino workers in the crowd. When asked about her physical condition, she kept it real. "I didn't feel my legs in the third set. I just played with my heart," she said. And frankly, that's the only explanation that makes sense. She won that final set on pure spirit and guts. Why is this result sending shockwaves through Russia? Because Russian women's tennis is a global powerhouse known for its incredible depth and history of dominance. Alexandrova is supposed to be one of their leaders, a pillar of consistency who rarely drops matches to anyone outside the top 30. For her to fall to a rising talent from the Philippines, a country that isn't traditionally a tennis superpower, is a massive wake-up call. It proves the sport is truly globalizing and warns the old guard that the new generation led by athletes like Eala is coming for the throne. This result completely blows the tournament draw wide open. We were supposed to see Alexandrova in the semis against the next seed. Now, the bracket is busted. Eala has emerged as the dark horse, the dangerous floater nobody wants to play because she's swinging freely with absolutely nothing to lose. Let's take a quick look at the stats because they tell the story of how this upset happened better than words can. Look at the first serve percentage. Alexandrova started strong at 70%, but under the heat of the third set, that number tanked to 55%. Eala's relentless pressure broke her rhythm. Alexandrova finished with 45 unforced errors that is simply way too high for a match at this level. Eala baited her into overhitting, while she kept her own sheet clean with only 20 errors. She became a human backboard that refused to give away free points. And on break points, Eala was lethal. She converted 4 out of 6 chances, showing ice-cold precision when the stakes were highest. In contrast, Alexandrova created 10 breakpoint chances but only converted 2. That gap in mental toughness on the big points is exactly why she's going home. It was a tactical masterclass. Eala surgically took apart Alexandrova's game. She neutralized the Russians' power by using height-heavy spin and varying the pace. She turned the tennis court into a chessboard, moving her pieces perfectly until she had the Russian queen in checkmate. So, where do we go from here? The fairy tale run isn't over yet as Alexandra Eala punches her ticket to the semi-finals of the Abu Dhabi Open. She has already sent a Grand Slam finalist packing in Sasnovich during the preliminary rounds, but now she has achieved something even greater by toppling a massive top 15 veteran titan in Alexandrova. At this point in the tournament, she is playing with what gamblers call house money, striking the ball with the fearless aggression of a veteran champion, and the impact this will have on the official world rankings is nothing short of astronomical. Securing a victory of this magnitude projects her to rocket straight into the top 40, and depending on how the remaining bracket plays out, she has a legitimate shot at cracking the top 35 by next week. This triumph effectively locks in her direct entry into the most prestigious tournaments on the globe, including all 4 Grand Slams and the premier WTA 1-1000 events, meaning her days of grinding through qualifying brackets are officially history. There will be no more fighting through the obscurity of the outer courts, because she has loudly announced her arrival on the main stage. But for tonight, we simply need to savor this moment and marvel at the sheer tenacity she displayed. In a modern tennis landscape that so often obsesses over raw power and physical domination, Alexandra Eala has proven to the entire world that the mind and the heart are still the strongest muscles an athlete can rely on. She proved that even when you are physically drained entering the contest as a massive underdog and totally outgunned, you can still carve out a path to glory if you simply refuse to wave the white flag. The Russian Federation is left in shock, the global tennis community is buzzing with excitement, and the entire Philippines is currently in celebration mode. Drop your immediate reactions in the comments section below right now. Let us be 100% honest with each other after that disastrous opening set. Did you think this match was over? Did you really believe Eala had anything left in the tank to turn it around? I also want your take on Alexandrova's collapse in the decider. Was that a mental choke under the pressure? Or did Eala simply step up her game and snatch the victory right out of her opponent's hands? Furthermore, I need your boldest predictions for the semifinals. Can Eala ride this wave of momentum all the way to the finish line? Is she actually going to lift the championship trophy here in Abu Dhabi? It sounds highly improbable on paper, but after witnessing the miracle of the last 2 days, I am finished using the word impossible when the subject of the conversation is Alexandra Eala. Ensure you are subscribed and have your notifications toggled on because we are going to be covering every single second of that massive semifinal clash live as it happens. We are bringing you the comprehensive preview, the play-by-play updates, and the deep dive post-match analysis right here. So do not miss out on what is essentially tennis history in the making. Thank you so much for tuning in for this breaking news update. It has been an absolute thrill breaking down this classic encounter with you as we watch the hierarchy of women's tennis shift right before our eyes.